Hi, welcome to Artbeat. My name is Maggie Reed, and I'm filling in for Susan Mulholland while she's on vacation. This month, we'll be visiting with Germaine Mancke, neophyte modern dance choreographer, and also with that man who puts the music behind the movies, Joe Renzetti. But first, let's visit with Susan Dershin as she shows us how she makes those beautiful necklaces out of shells and fiber. Stay tuned.
Each piece that I make is like making a picture out of knots. Whether you're using one technique or another, it's really the knots that create the look of the piece. I always start with a natural object. If I'm working with a stone or with a shell, I try and really get an idea of what colors will highlight and bring out the natural beauty of the object itself. Sometimes, if a piece is very complicated, the challenge is to stay out of the way. And if it's a little bit simpler, then it's to highlight it and you get more complicated. But I always begin with the piece itself. This particular piece that I'm working on, I really love the dark marcations in the shell, and I've tried to recreate that actually in the macrame. On the bottom of the piece, I try to sort of mirror that little round piece of darkness in the bottom of the shell. And I find that the shells have these natural swirly shapes in them, which I like a lot. My shapes tended to be a little bit more linear and geometric until I started working with shells, and then I started going really into curves. And this piece, when it's finished, is going to have a kind of cornucopia shape where these spirals that are starting to go out will eventually completely go around to a little curved point when all of the cords are finished being knotted. And I also use in this piece a lot of the dyed cords and also some of the knitting fibers that I've spoken about. And from the rather limited number of colors that they come in, I dye them all these different colors. And I also use some knitting and crocheting yarns to weave in. With more elaborate pieces, I weave them in with the nylon fibers because they add texture in 3 dimensions. The different fiber crafts are knots. It's just with some things you're using a hook like in crocheting, and if you're knitting you're using needles, but you're making knots with needles or with a crochet hook or with a lace making machine or a shuttlecock, which is what you tat with. And macrame, you just do it freehand. My jewelry is generally divided into 3 main categories. There are your more what in the craft world we call one-of-a-kind pieces, which is where the craft person gets to express probably their most artistic self. And that's sort of one line. And then there's sort of a more middle line, which are substantial pieces but are a little bit more reproducible in terms of pattern and so forth, although when you're working with natural pieces, each one is going to be somewhat one of a kind. And then there are kind of fun little items, little bracelets that people can just sort of wear that aren't terribly expensive, that would be sort of a third line. I market my things mostly at craft shows. When I first began, I used to sell through showrooms and wholesale, but fortunately that isn't necessary. And as far as advertising, if that's what you're talking about, I've had my pieces appear in a lot of national magazines and so forth, across the country. McCall's, Better Homes and Gardens, Ornament magazine, a lot of local magazines that publicize their own communities. Like in Greenwich, Connecticut, they have a museum show and they use my piece in their local magazine. In 17 magazine, for instance, a model had a coordinated outfit on and I was asked to make a choker that would match it, and in that case it was sort of more backgroundy. In other situations they would have it as the main focal piece and there would be a little blurb about my life and how I work. One thing that people don't realize is the inordinate amount of time that artists and craft people spend by themselves in their studios, so that when the warm weather season starts and we start going to the craft shows, people think craft people are the nicest, friendliest people in the world, and it's mainly because they've been locked up in a room with almost no contact with anyone except for a few friends and relatives from January through about April, and then we're let out and we're the friendliest, most talkative people you could ever hope to meet. And the craft shows themselves are a wonderful way to market your things because it's up to you and the public what you want to make. You're not limited by someone else's conception of fashion, and you can really be creative, and as long as you can fly with the public, you're okay. It's wonderful because you're really truly self-employed, and yet you have this outlet to sell your things at and to meet other artists and craft people who constantly are exchanging energy and ideas and stimulating each other artistically. It's a very nice life.
After spending a wonderful afternoon with Susan Dershin in the world of crafts, we then turned our focus to modern dance. Modern dance is a radical departure from the more classic forms of dance that we all know. Its movement is much freer, and it has a much more spontaneous nature.
I started, I guess, when I was about 12 in a typical dance studio. My sister and I took dance classes, and we took ballet and jazz and tap. And I really liked it. I liked it a lot then, and of course I still do. I went on, as a teenager, I stopped it for a little while, and then when I became 18, I took it up again, and I took ballet and modern dance, and I really liked modern dance a lot. I liked the intellectual part of it, I think. I like it that it seemed to be, for me, more art than than entertainment, and that's the part of it I like. I first really started to become intrigued and realize that modern dance was something that I wanted to do when I started studying Graham technique. Martha Graham is an American pioneer in modern dance, and I started taking classes in her technique, and I just really loved it. And I think I would say that Martha Graham, reading about her and taking her classes, her techniques, made me really commit to modern dance. Going from a student to teacher to choreographer and really back again sort of just happened naturally. I started teaching in my home, small classes, and then I went on to teach in a studio in Doylestown. The way I choreograph right now, I'm trying to use different techniques. Sometimes I start with music and choreograph to the music. Sometimes I'll use different music than I intend to use in the studio, different from what the final product will be, so that the dance isn't ruled by the music. It's sort of hand in hand, you know, they're on equal ground, they complement each other. I sometimes just start with some idiosyncratic movement and start piling them together on top of each other until there gets to be a phrase, a dance phrase. And then often I try to let the dance sort of give me clues about where it wants to go. I try to look at it and I say, oh my gosh, there's a lot of two-dimensionality in this. Is this going to be the theme of this dance? Or, you know, I've been putting out this really fast movement. You know, is that the way that the dance is going to go? I don't usually make a plan, you know, saying, well, I want to do a dance about whatever. I'd rather do it sort of backwards. I like to draw from the dance and first let it lead me, let it clue me in on what it wants to be about, and then I use my formal training skills to help it along. Fast Forward Rewind is a dance that I worked on this last year, and this dance did start with music. A friend of mine, Paul Zotter, taped a guitar song composition, and he played it backwards, and he taped it backwards, so there was a song and then there was a song backwards. And I thought this would be a really neat idea if I could make up a dance and then see what the dance would be like backwards, you know, how it would change it dynamically and visually, and what would happen with that. I started with a solo, and then I did another solo, and then I took the two solos and the dancers themselves retrograded the movement, and we put them together as a duet, and it turned out really interesting. The things that happened that weren't planned. I think that in the videotape you can see the section where the dancers are doing it forward, and then you can see the section where together they do each other in the movement. bench dances that we did, I thought it fun. We had 4 dancers, and they made up a dance that they did on a bench, and it started out pedestrian. We wanted to sit in amongst the audience members and have them do movement that was just a little bit off normal movement, and see what would happen, see how the audience would react. And I think that concept was the important thing in that, more so than the actual movement being thrilling and breathtaking, although it was nice. It's pretty safe to say that it's kind of an American dance form. You know, of course not now. In the beginning it was, but now it can be found, you know, anywhere.
Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. Drop us a line at Suburban Community Television, 4145 Swamp Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania 18901. You might even hear your letter being shared with our other viewers on an upcoming show. You can also reach us over the phone at 345-5154.
In 1979, Joe Renzetti won an Oscar for his musical adaptation score for the Buddy Holly story. Since then, his credits include the music for Poltergeist 3, the John Sable series, Child's Play, and many other television and film projects.
That was good.
I thought so.
It took them all that time to get a score. Well, the second... You might as well go
All right,
on.
this is getting very dicey. The second award in the music category is for Outstanding Adaptation Score.
Oh. And the nominees are...
The Buddy Holly story adaptation score by Joe Renzetti.
Yeah!
In a recent interview with Joe Renzetti, he told us what events in his career led up to the moment of his nomination.
Well, I started my career in Philadelphia back in the 60s when American Bandstand originated there. There was a record company called Cameo Parkway, and I was the house guitar player, the staff guitar player. And we did records like the Bristol Stomp and the Mashed Potatoes and You Can't Sit Down and South Street, Let's Twist Again. And I was the house guitar player. I played guitar on all those records. And that got me into the so-called professional area of the music business. And then what happened, of course, is that since American Bandstand played all our records by a pre-arrangement, they became very popular, and Cameo Parkway became very busy and successful. And they needed someone, they needed a few people actually, to do the arranging and producing of the records, because it was growing, as I said, very quickly. Matter of fact, some people called us the second Motown, and other things. And I got a job arranging some of the music, beyond and above playing guitar. And so I got into arranging music. I knew music. I knew how to notate and score and orchestrate and all that stuff, being a serious music student. So I got to the availability to do some arranging, and I did mostly albums at the time. But then what happened, I started going to New York and getting involved in arranging for some big stars. And I had a few hits. My first hit was Sonny by Bobby Hebb. Yes, Sonny, thank you for that. Yes, that one. And that was my first big arranging hit. And then I became very successful and popular and busy after that. And then I got very busy doing songs like Apple, Peaches, Pumpkin Pie, 98.6. I did a couple of cuts for Neil Diamond. I did cuts for Al Hurt, Spankin' Our Gang. Then about in the early 70s, I did a couple of sessions for a new singer coming on the scene called Barry Manilow. And I did Mandy, and did the arrangement to that. Arranging, a lot of people ask that question, what does arranging mean? Arranging is the person that casts the background of a song with the orchestration, that is the musicians, the sound. For example, if you take the song Yankee Doodle, an arranger could arrange it like Ray Charles would sing it, or he could arrange it, or she could arrange it like Ella Fitzgerald would sing it. In other words, it's still the same song, it's still the basic lyric and the basic melodic, harmonic content, but it's cast into a different style. That's what arranging is. It's the forming of the musical background. So I did that with Mandy, and then about the mid-'70s, some friends of mine from the record business asked me if I could do a film they were doing about Buddy Holly. Well, since I'd lived through the 50s and 60s playing and in that music and being involved in it, I sort of knew something about it. And I got the job to do the music to the Buddy Holly story. There, I taught the actors to actually play and sing and train them individually as players on the prearranged songs, and then put them together on a soundstage as a band, as the Buddy Holly Band. They never played those instruments before in their lives, and they never, well, as far as I know, that was the first time anyone acted and played instruments on stage. I mean, it's done in documentary form, but not where the actors are actually playing and singing. I think that was the first. And for that, I got an Academy Award for what they call adaptation score, which is when you take someone's music and put it into a different form, from another media, that is.
And the winner is Upside Down. Oh. Joe Renzetti for the Buddy Holly story.
I'd like to thank some very talented men with foresight, courage, the producer, Mr. Fred Bauer, the director, Steve Rash, a very skilled and patient man, Mr. Ed Cohen, and the actors who, I don't know if all you kind ladies and gentlemen know, actually played and sung on camera with 24-track recording, and we did it, and thank you all.
Well, after I did Buddy Holly, of course it was at least critically a very well-received film. I got lots of calls to start doing other films, which is the way the business fortunately works. I got a call from Ron Howard to do it was his first TV production called Cotton Candy, and it included Charlie Martin Smith, who was also in the Buddy Holly story. And that was a TV show, and that was my first TV show, and I got experience and knowledge working on that. And then a whole bunch of things. I did Fatso for Anne Bancroft with Dom DeLuise. I did Elvis. Kurt Russell played Elvis for Dick Clark. Then I sort of got into some horror movies and some films like Dead and Buried, and a wonderful film called Vice Squad. And so I got my experience as to writing film music and dealing with timings and film, synchronizing music to film. Gained a lot of experience doing that, and went on to do Under the Rainbow with Chevy Chase, and I did a film called Wanted Dead or Alive with Rutger Hauer. That was totally done synthesized. No, there was a live sax player and a live harmonica player, but all the other instruments were totally synthesized. I also did Poltergeist 3 here. That was 100% synthesized. I did a TV show, or at least 6 episodes of a TV show called Sable.
The following is a work print from Sable, a 1988 ABC miniseries without music or complete sound mixing.
Lillian! It's okay, you're safe now.
And now Joe adds his musical touch.
What you have to realize is that I've been in the music business for many years. Consequently, I could afford to be tucked away in Bucks County and have some of my friends from New York and Philadelphia and California call me to do things. It probably works to my disadvantage. If I was in LA, I'd be safe and warm. No, if I was in LA, if I was in LA, I'd probably be busier and more successful. But I don't like that lifestyle. I prefer calm and quiet and then moments of sheer terror.
Thank you for joining me this month. This is Maggie Reed saying goodbye for Artbeat.